Good afternoon, everyone. I'd request Jeevan to start giving a short introduction about himself.
Hello. Thank you very much, Mr. Raman. My name is Jeevan, and I'm working with Jio. I'm responsible for 5G business at Jio. I work very thickly with enterprises in India and as well globally with the CSPs because Jio is one very unique CSP in India which has developed its own 5G portfolio. So Jio's 5G launch in India has happened on its own 5G standalone core. So that we are now trying to position to the telcos outside India. So that's my primarily day job. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Ashish. My name is Ashish Khushu. I'm the Chief Technology Officer in L&T Technology Services. It's one of India's largest engineering services companies, and because of which we've been engaged in this 5G area for the last 6 years, and look forward to this discussion.
Jayanta, please.
Hi, I'm Jayanta Mukherjee. I run the R&D for the Communications Technology Group for Hewlett Packard Enterprise. So we're roughly a $500 million business, which is focused on providing network solutions, products and solutions into the telcos, and we will speak about what we're doing in the private 5G space directly with enterprises. So, thank you.
Hello, my name is Ganapathy. I'm a neurosurgeon by training. I've stopped my neurosurgical practice. But in 1998, I got interested in technology-enabled remote healthcare. Today, we run the Asia's largest, oldest, multi-specialty telehealth network. We do about 20,000 teleconsultations every single day. I belong to the BC era, and therefore, all questions I would ask is, so what? My staff hate this, but I think that is very, very important. I strongly believe that you need a brake as much as you need an accelerator to get forward. I'm not talking of autonomous cars, I'm talking of the olden days. So I would spend a minute or two on trying to say, so what? That would be my approach to the use of 5G in healthcare.
Thanks, Dr. Ganapathy. I think this will essentially set the stage for a fantastic session from a panel discussion standpoint. Jeevan, I'll start with you. From a private 5G network, how do you see that the service offerings and support you provide to your customers will essentially be ramped up to meet the evolving needs?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. It's very intriguing. Foremost, I think that digitalization is not taking over in all parts of the industry verticals. And if you look at the spend that the companies are making in digitalization, let's assume that an enterprise has $100 to be spent. Then the value chain spells out like this. They would typically spend $10 on selecting a connectivity piece. They would spend $15 on selecting a right equipment or a right actuator or a sensor or a device. They would spend another $15 on selecting a platform, which could be cloud native or which could be captive. They would spend another $30 on selecting a right application and another $30 in putting all these things together over the system integration. So I clearly see that most of the industrial verticals are undergoing this digital transformation, and hence their requirements are evolving on the connectivity front as well. So the previous technologies of connectivities are not able to serve their evolving requirements, which are like much lesser latency and much higher throughput. And it is somewhere connected to the human behavior also, because the more and more speed you are exposed to, you would tend to have even more or a craving for even more. There's a simple example, right? I mean, I'm one who was using MP3 application, a simple application on my phone for listening to the music. Now I open up YouTube while I'm driving. I'm not really looking at YouTube, but I'm consuming the data. I'm consuming the video. So it's a change in the human behavior itself. And that's very truly happening among the industrial fraternity as well. So for example, what is happening is your customer is becoming more and more demanding on the companies. And then there are bottlenecks which are being identified, and those are exactly the intervention points for a new technology to step in. So I clearly see that 5G is going to solve many problems or the challenges which the industries have been facing until now. And if you look at the recent GSA report, it spells out that the private 5G has been embraced by not less than 1,000 enterprises globally now. It's not a big number, looking at the global number of the enterprises. However, the journey has begun, and in India, I'm very thickly involved in all the discussions we have with enterprises at Jio. So I know that there is a transformation which is undertaking, though there have not been many news articles in the public domain, but there are many things under wraps which we'll see very soon coming to the fore. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeevan. I'll go next with Jayanta. Jayanta, what role does private 5G play in enabling secure and efficient communication for the enterprises? Because Jeevan talked about Jio being a service provider, now recently as a communication equipment and the stack provider. How does he recently, I'll go in that order in order to get there.
Okay, so I'll present a builder's view, okay, because what we do is build out some of these, 5G offerings. So think of Hewlett Packard Enterprise as some sort of a network solutions provider in that sense. Okay, first, the bad news. We heard Kanchana talking about, as far as 5G is concerned, we are somewhere in the middle, in the middle of the journey, if you will. Honestly, today, most of the enterprise network layouts are still private LTE, okay? So that's where I think people are. That's how connectivity and networking is being consumed. Is 5G getting into that space? Absolutely. Is 5G getting into that space fast enough? Our view is absolutely not. It's basically, we're still coming out of an era where we have had a supply chain disruption. The news articles on supply chain disruptions have gone down. The reality is only sinking in. So what is needed for a good private 5G rollout is something which I would say is about to take place sometime around 2025, because the way we see it, that's really the inflection point where the roughly 4 billion odd revenues that we get out of private LTE today in the market is what is going to be realized by private 5G around that time, okay? So now, that's a bit of a slightly dark, gloomy picture in terms of private 5G adoption. But the good news is that there's a lot of advancement in terms of realizing what kind of use cases will actually see the light of day as far as private 5G is concerned. The other good news is there's a humongous amount of pandemic and post-pandemic government spending in this space. Okay, there's roughly order of magnitude about $3 trillion of government money or federal investments that are available just in the ICT space. Okay, a few hundred billions of it is going to be in the 5G space. Clearly, it is already in the 5G space. A part of it is definitely in the private 5G space, though a large part of it is still in the public 5G space. That's where we see Jio and others making significant inroads. What's happening is that there is a significant industrial SI business that has kicked off at this point in time, which is working with some of the global 2,000-sized companies and clearly some of the leading Fortune 500 companies as well, in order to actually lay out a full-fledged, seamless communication, with low latency, massive machine type communications kind of use cases. This is happening as we speak. This is happening not so much in the global SI space, I would say, but in the industrial SI space, this is very, very active at this point in time. Come 2025, I think we will see an inflection point. By the time we get to 2030, I think we will see some real rollouts happening in the private 5G space with use cases that go beyond the rudimentary, because it is not about, I have a Wi-Fi network in an enterprise, so should we go about, moving it into a private 5G kind of a network. That's, in the way we are seeing the market and the way we are seeing the customers, that's really not what's happening. What's happening is a mixed mode hybrid network where with private 5G, because see, the advantage of a 5G core is that it can terminate multiple different connectivity technologies into it, all right? So a large-scale hybrid network is getting rolled out. SMBs are not so much in this game as yet. Like I said, this is still the global 2,000-sized companies where we see this kind of a rollout. So we'll have to wait and see, but the technology is maturing for sure, and the rollout and the use cases, like I said, we are approaching a time, in 2 years' time, I think we would really be at a place where we have started replacing private LTE. Till then, right now, it is still private LTE.
Thanks, Jayanta. I think I'll go next with Ashish. Since Jayanta talked about industrial areas, I would like to ask you, Ashish, what opportunity do you see as a service provider from 5G network creates in optimizing operations and enhancing smart manufacturing process across multiple industry verticals?
Frankly, nothing.
It could be process manufacturing, whatever.
Don't even have to listen to the question. Frankly, nothing. I don't know whether you chose it by design or you didn't choose the panel, but here is an operator, here is an OEM, here is a consumer, here are we. Very serious about technology, filed 220 patents every year, have been invested in 5G for a long time, and you heard two of them talk of 5G evolving by 2025. This timeline has been shifting, specifically from a private 5G enterprise perspective. You need to really, I'm not trying to be contrarian, I'm more on his side right now. I think it's important, since we are talking in a non-commercial environment and just sharing thoughts, I can be a little bit more indiscreet. I think it's important to understand where exactly are we. One use case that when private 5G came in and we went to private 5G was autonomous cars. Really? V2X can work on 4G. The problem is that V2X does not have standards. It's got nothing to do with implementation of 5G. A car has to stop, that's mechatronics. It's got nothing to do with 5G. Now, come to private networks. What problem does it solve? 3 areas, and I'll take only one. Applications which have requirements of latencies less than 3 milliseconds. Some people say 1 millisecond, I'll say 3 milliseconds. We did a study of 120 use cases in the engineering, manufacturing, private 5G enterprises. Found 3. Found only 3 applications which require less than 3 milliseconds of response time for 5G to do what private LTE, as he rightly said, cannot do. Now, look at what's happening out there. I think it's important that when we say that private 5G is going to disrupt, make changes, it's not happened so far. Come 2025, in a private enterprise, these are enterprise guys, right? They're not technology guys. There's already a question on what will Wi-Fi 6 do and what will private 5G do. And come 2025, we'll have the same panel and same discussions on 6G early adoption. Now, it's important to understand and acknowledge that some technologies come, they're used for, early adoption, they're used for causing disruptions, and then they fade out and something else comes over. So we've been doing private 5G, please do not confuse with public, private 5G application development for 4 years. What's the order value? 75K, 100K. Convince the guy, open up his networks, do an application, take 6 months, and after that what? So I think it's important to go back, in my view, to private 5G and ask this question. What exactly is 5G trying to do in the private space which private LTE cannot do? And is the cost of disrupting your network and going to private 5G for those corner use cases of less than 3 milliseconds worth it or not? If you answer that question, you'll realize that we are up a very difficult argument to win a guest. That's really my point of view on this. Sorry
Absolutely,
for
Ashish.
disappointing you.
No, absolutely, Ashish, because we're essentially talking about this particular thing taking off, and absolutely the right use cases are essentially going to be very important for anything from an adoption standpoint. If there are no right use cases, adoption is not going to be there, and truly so, the discussion between which is better, Wi-Fi 6 is better or is 5G better?
So it'll coexist, we know that. I'll give you an example of, sorry, I'll just take a minute just so that everybody wakes up. Good lunch. End of line inspection of a bottling bottle. The problem is not it is less than 3 millisecond issue. You need 5G, but that's really not the issue there. I can do with 4G provided I have fantastic imaging capabilities. So there are these nuances which are there in private 5G, where private 5G enterprise use cases, which if you dive deeper and deeper, you'll realize that many of them, those 3 or 4 corner cases also can be solved with private LTE. And that's why they're finding it very difficult to replace private LTE networks, right? And that's what you said, very difficult. I don't see anybody changing it unless he's building a greenfield plant and then saying, my greenfield plant, which is a new plant, by the way, will be only 5G enabled. Then it's a different issue altogether.
Absolutely.
But existing looks very difficult.
Thanks, Ashish. I'll go next to, from a point of view of healthcare. Dr. Ganapathy, I would request that while Ashish made a remark with respect to what is happening in the 5G area from an industrial standpoint, from a healthcare standpoint, what has been your experiences of trying to adopt, use, or you also have a similar viewpoint?
First of all, a disclaimer, I'm not a technology expert. I belong to the BC era. The fundamental reason for existence of any healthcare provider, and I feel very strongly about it, in my opinion, is what have you done to make your individual patient's symptoms better? Have you made an influence in treating that particular patient, or in public health, the community of patients, etc.? So Apollo Hospitals has never followed high standards. We set them. I repeat, we don't follow high standards, we set them. So we keep an open mind, and in Apollo Hospitals, Hyderabad, they have just started a private 5G network, and I hope in 2 years maybe we will have scientific evidence, statistically valid, that the deployment of 5G in a hospital setting, more important in a pre-hospital setting, what we call a hospital on wheels, pre-hospital management, where we compare 200, 300, 400 patients where 5G was used and another 200, 300 where 5G was not used. I need evidence that the group where 5G was used did better in the clinical outcome. That is all I'm interested. I care a damn whether it is of half a millisecond or 3 millisecond latency, that, this, etc. Similarly, we also need a ROI, a return on investment. I am not competent to talk about the investment and what return, etc. By definition, all over the world, the healthcare arena, I don't like the word industry, the healthcare industry is very, very conservative, very slow to adopt. Telesurgery has fascinated the media and has fascinated everybody. As a patient, I wonder, would anywhere in India today I can reach from Kanyakumari to Kashmir in 4 hours? If the surgery is so critical that 6 to 7 hours later I can't be operated, I'm not going to make it at all. Telesurgery, honestly, there are medico-legal implications, the regulations, some Geo with its fantastic network, sir. I'm a great admirer of Geo. Something happened that particular second, it fails, my patient dies. Can I pass the malpractice suit against me? Will you take the responsibility? Will the manufacturer of the robot take the responsibility? And so on and so forth. So the message I'm trying to convey is going to take a long, long time, but we keep an open mind. We are more than happy to do a study. I honestly don't know the answer. Personally, telementoring has got a great role, where 5G can be a fantastic clinical use. There are 530 medical colleges in India. theoretically it should not be that difficult to provide 5G for these 530 medical colleges. Identify 20 to 30 of the leading medical institutions in the country, do operative procedures where the entire medical community can follow at a millisecond level. So tele-mentoring is, yes, it's a great use case, but telesurgery, I think, is more hype and the media.
Thanks, Doctor. I think given these two views, Ashish and Dr. Ganapathy, Jeevan, coming back to you.
You're not against each other.
No, it is not. I'm only talking about the views part of it.
I agree with him on public networks.
So essentially, from a technical requirements and challenges associated with deploying them across industry, what do you see as essentially the challenges moving forward?
Yeah, so there are definitely identified set of challenges that we are struggling with. The foremost challenge is having the right ecosystem of devices. Primarily because to make any 5G use case to life, it takes your blood and sweat. As Ashish did talk about, the use cases being very challenging. And that is true. So you got to have deep pockets to be able to acquire the companies and make sure that their products or the devices become native 5G devices. For example, what I mean, let me explain. At Jio, we have acquired a robotics company called Adverb because there is no single robot in the world which houses a 5G SIM card as it is. There's no such robot. So what we did is we opened up the robot, we opened up its PC, we embedded a Quectel modem inside the robot, and now the modem is sitting inside the robot, right? So 5G modem, the robot is 5G native. So I just have to put up a 5G SIM and the robot is up and running. So that's the kind of investment you got to make if you see a potential in robotic being the first 5G use case under Industry 4.0. So that kind of investments, those who are ready to make, they can aspire to be successful in this game. Secondly, there is other thread. For example, if I say I don't have an infinite amount of money to keep investing in all the verticals. So definitely what happens is you need to choose the natural partners of different industries to work with. So this is a game wherein it's becoming very collaborative in nature. Because I go to mining, I might be the best 5G connectivity provider to mine. I might provide them the robot, but do I understand mining environment? I don't. Do I know how to do the integration in a mining environment? I don't. If they just send me a digital map of the mine, am I able to plan my network inside the mine? I can't. So I need a player which is very, very specialized into a mining environment. It could be an SI player, like L&T, for example. So I think there is no second option of going on your own. You got to be collaborative, you got to work with many partners, and that's again coming out as a challenge because two human beings don't go well with each other. The partners in a business environment and handle that ecosystem, make them work with each other seamlessly, harmoniously, it's very, very difficult. So two challenges I identified. One is the use cases are very, very typical to every single industrial sector, and you got to invest into the use cases. Secondly, no single entity could invest into the use case, so you need to collaborate in this space to be successful. Or you choose your battlefield, saying, in India, manufacturing is contributing, say, 18% to the GDP, so the biggest industry for me to go ahead with for 5G, so I would only focus my efforts on Industry 4.0, I would not do anything else. So something like that, choose your battlefield.
Thanks, Jeevan. Ashish, given the exercise you did on looking at multiple use cases, and you said that of them, 3 or 4 essentially hit the criteria for less than 3 milliseconds this thing. Is there anything kind of a proof of concept you did, and you could essentially share some example on?
Yeah, when we took about 125 or 135 use cases, we dove deeper into what those use cases do, created a simulated performance matrix on if you require a certain amount of performance, what is the latencies required, latencies, response time required, etc., etc. After that, we ended up doing some pilots on our own, and then we started taking it up to the customers, and we implemented 5 or 6 of them. As I said earlier, an additional challenge which he brought out, Jeevan, is also very appropriate, because if you really have to get the type of 5G experience that you're talking of, then the network right through to the device out to be 5G enabled natively. So we also ended up doing some work on enabling 5G modem in itself. That in itself is a very, very difficult task, right? And this whole thing, right from the 5G enabled modem devices, et cetera, to the application, even the robos. So we've done some use cases. Performance has been okay. It meets the criteria. But then again, the question of ROI comes in. And when the question of ROI comes in, you realize that it's possibly not a very attractive option for people to go in for.
Okay. Thanks,
So
Ashish.
automatic, a robo in a warehouse, choosing an automatic path in itself, immersive experience in terms of real-time gaming, the worker safety, because geofencing is also, geolocation accuracy is also one of the features of 5G.
Absolutely.
So some of these worker safety, where exactly has he fallen, what is the difference between the actual place where he's had an accident to what gets relayed, these type of pilots have been done. They fare out to be fairly okay from performance, but then ROI and the investments that he's talking of is
Thanks, Ashish.
off.
Thanks. Jayanta, coming from what Ashish and Jeevan talked about from a challenge perspective, and Ashish also talked about earlier that if it is going to be a green plant, then if it is going to be 5G, then it is something that is a big go. So it can happen because it could definitely save a lot on cabling and things like that. But if it is going to be on a brownfield kind of scenarios, there are going to be quite a good amount of interoperability challenges and things like that, right? How do you see interoperability challenges, including security and data privacy, getting addressed with this?
Yeah, so like I said, I mean, while it looks like greenfield should be the first point of call, if you will, for the deployment of some of the 5G networks, the reality is that's not what's happening. So greenfield is not investing in 5G upfront today. One of the reasons is the use cases and stuff like that we've been talking about. Where we actually see investments is, interestingly, in the government sector, frankly, where there is a plethora of networks already. So you have Wi-Fi, you have the various generations of 3G, 4G, et cetera, which are already rolled out. Now, in such scenarios, what we are seeing with 5G rollouts, especially, and many of you are probably aware of the US Department of Defense RFPs, and now we're already in the network rollout phase there, right? So what we are seeing there is starting with the 5G core, this ability to aggregate the different connectivities. Because, remember, all said and done, the 5G connectivity itself, that is something which is, that's not where the value is. The value is still in the data, okay? So the network is an enabler. The connectivity is something that is a given that will help you. Evolution in connectivity technologies allows you better speed and things like that. But faster Facebook or faster Meta is not what 5G is all about in any case. So what we are seeing basically is this aggregation of the different connectivity technologies onto a 5G core. Because that's, by design and by definition, 5G core has capabilities better than what we have seen in the previous generations of the technology, number one. With the release 18 of the 3GPP specs, we have a built-in verticalized security stack, which again is a very good option for all this aggregation of the different connectivity technologies onto the core. But is there a fundamental security issue or a connectivity issue, an interworking issue when we try to merge these different technologies? I mean, of course, yes, because there is going to be this whole new problem of trying to bring in a consistent quality of service across the interworking networks. And we don't even know how to measure it very well at this point in time. We know how to measure it point to point, right? And we know how to measure it end to end as well for a given stack or a given network rollout. Moment you talk about complex interworkings, we still have to figure out a good way of saying that, okay, whether you're talking about latency or whether you're talking about any other parameter of quality of service, there is a lot of handcrafting that is happening today. Is there an opportunity to fix it? Yes. I just hope somebody in this room can get together and fix this. Is there an opportunity in the OEM space? Yes, because the traditional OEM with all its this onboarding of network functions and things like that is a hugely cumbersome process and I'm sure when you're doing your POCs and stuff, it is a we sometimes say it is a semi-automated process, really speaking, in some sense. So the integration is possible. It is happening. In fact, a lot of it is happening in, like I said, in large organizations, especially in governments and things like that. Unfortunately, there is a fair amount of bespoke that is happening in some of those implementations at this point in time. There is a possibility that a lot of this bespokeness will go away over a period of time and more standardization will happen as we get there. But it's really still the core network and the capabilities of the core network of being able to aggregate these different connectivity technologies is what is playing out at this point in time. So we'll have to see, because with the plethora of RAN that is being deployed today, the other space, and again, I'm sure a lot of the people here are actively watching that space. RAN automation is a topic which is beyond just the English words describing it. It is something which is an absolute need of the hour, especially as brownfield deployments happen. So these are some of the things that we are seeing. Again, none of these. There is no golden wand to get past some of the issues, but yes, integration is happening. There are problems. Today, there's a lot of bespokeness in this whole thing.
Okay. Thanks, Jayanta. So, Doctor, you essentially talked about Apollo Telehealth or telemedicine setting up a 5G testbed. So can you essentially talk about some of the use cases that are being tried out? As you said that over the period, the results will essentially talk about was it effective or not. Can you essentially talk about some of them?
With your permission, before going to the test case, can I give a 2-minute background?
Yep, please.
You need to understand that a medical doctor takes a clinical decision based on information and data given to him. By increasing the speed of data transmission by 2 seconds, the most experienced clinician still requires 20 seconds to process, is it a man, is it a woman, how old is he, diabetic, hypertensive, blah, 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 etc. So this is the background you need to understand. When I take a decision, I also have to factor in 100 different variables and give different weightages to each one of these variables. Is he covered by insurance? Can he afford it? All stupid reasons. But nevertheless, all these have to be factored in. I am worried, I am concerned that technology is not being used. Okay, the way I have been trained is technology is a means to achieve an end and not an end by itself. A fool with a tool is still a fool. See, this is very, very important. This is a means to achieve an end. I am worried that we are developing solutions and then going in search of problems. Having given this background, in Apollo, I'm not directly connected with this. In Apollo Hospitals, Hyderabad, a couple of months ago, they have specifically started a private 5G unit, which is being used as a test bed. So I understand, as I said, I'm not the expert in this. I understand that the current 4G Wi-Fi in the intra-hospital environment does have some challenges, so this has been started. The main use, low-hanging fruits, forget telesurgery. The low-hanging fruits of the use of 5G would be IOMT. Please understand that 5G or the speed of transmission, communication is only a small component of the entire decision-making process. You need to understand that. In healthcare, 5G cannot be considered in isolation. Today, in 2023, I need IOMT, Internet of Medical Things. We have a dozen equipments. All my paramedics today wear body cams, like policemen you see in Netflix. They all wear body cams and they take photographs instantaneously, send it immediately. The emergency doctor, in case it's a former Apollo patient, a UHID number, within seconds I can get the entire medical record of the patient. So in other words, by the time a hospital, a smart ambulance as we call it, by the time the smart ambulance comes to the ER from the central command center. Now let's say it is somewhere in Hyderabad. Every hospital in Hyderabad does not have facilities for thrombolysis, does not have facility, does not have an MRI, blah, blah, blah. So I would direct the ambulance not to go to the nearest hospital, which is a mistake often made, but to go to an institution where such facilities are available. So these are just some use cases. Colonoscopy again, when we put a colonoscope, we have 20, 30 polyps inside the colon. Today, as I said, I understand that today these images can be viewed with augmented reality, virtual reality, etc., far better than a most experienced surgeon can see on a monitor. So there are dozens of use cases. I just don't have time to go through all this. But please understand, why are people talking of healthcare, healthcare, healthcare? Because we are the only, and I'm sure of what I'm talking about, industry, quote unquote, which is recession proof. In 2008, when the entire world shares plunged down, hospital care shares increased, not because of management of depression, but because of various other things. So healthcare is what you need before you are born and even after you leave the world. So this is one industry which is absolutely essential for every one of us. Therefore, if you can find a good use case for 5G, I think purely from a deployment point of view, ROI point of view, etc., it'll be fantastic. But my plea is, let's keep an open mind, let's do a study, and then come to a conclusion.
Thanks, Doctor. It's an interesting observation. I think we have another 9 minutes to go. Maybe I will open the floor for question and answer session. Any questions from the audience, please? If there are no questions from the audience, I have a question to ask. If there are any questions, I could essentially go with that. Okay, still waiting for the questions. I'll essentially throw one more question here on this side. Looking at the emerging trends and the advancements that are happening, and what we heard from Dr. Ashish and others, what is essentially the message for the startup community where they need to focus on from a 5G standpoint?
Okay, as I said in the beginning of my note, the value chain is very complex. So the startup has to really find out what is it that they're good at, what is their strength. So they got to play to their strength in that part of the value chain. It's very, very clear. So if you try to address everything, then it's like very, very difficult. No large company today is even not taking that call of doing everything on its own. For example, if you want to, I want to scan all the verticals where private 5G could be positioned or a 5G could be positioned, then do I have the competence to be able to handle all those verticals or fulfill their requirements? I don't. Do I have the appetite to build that competence? I don't. Then what do? I choose my battle. I think it is the same thing which applies to a startup as well. So to be precise, I think devices is a big piece. So hardware value chain is evolving in India. The government is very supportive of you making the hardware in India. So I guess if somebody really wants to step into that domain, it's a good area to step in. Another good area is system integration, primarily because the value which resides in system integration piece is about 30%. And you can choose the area of your choice. You can do the device integration, get out of it. You can do the application integration, get out of it. So don't try to eat the entire piece of the puzzle. Let the master integrator do that. You just pick up your small area and be successful in it. Let me give an example of why I think that IoT has not taken off the way it should have. Primarily because the large companies could not address the small puzzles all on their own. They had to work with many, many small players. And instead, those small players, and I can name many companies, it's not appropriate for me to name them on a public forum, who have become extremely successful with IoT. And why is it so? They had been very small, the startups, and now they've become very significant. And primarily it is because they focused on their area of interest and their area of strength. And they just cared about the revenue they're going to get out of it and service their customers in the best possible manner. I think that kind of razor-sharp focus is required from a startup to stay on firm footing. And somebody in the previous session did give a very good advice, and it's right to come from the entrepreneurs themselves. I'm not an entrepreneur, so I don't qualify to give that advice, but it came from them that don't do free POCs for large companies. It doesn't help you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeevan. Doctor, you want to add to this on the...
I think I'm particularly qualified to answer that question because I have been evaluating proposals for funding for the last 5 years, wherever healthcare was involved, for BIRAC, Bioindustry Research Assistance Council, and for the DBT. The common message which I see through in most of it is, I'm not being cynical, but I'm talking of hard, solid, personal experience, is that all you brilliant guys come up with fantastic ideas in areas where you are not actually involved in. You cannot learn swimming through a postal course. You need to get into the water to learn swimming. So my advice would be, and Mr. Jeevan, I totally agreed with you. I'm very happy when you mentioned that. He very nicely said that he doesn't know mining. Let's accept the fact that I do not know the intricacies of a printed circuit board. But similarly, when you come up with an idea at the conceptualization stage, please involve the appropriate domain expert at that stage. Don't ask me to validate an equipment which you have already made the prototype. You cannot do anything in clinical medicine, in healthcare, unless the purchase officer of a hospital is buying it. And believe me, no purchase officer will sign a check. Morning, I've been repeatedly hearing the word signing a check. That's why I'm using that word. Nobody is going to sign a check unless you have solid evidence, publication in a peer-reviewed journal with a high impact index, a double-blind, randomized, controlled, multi-institutional crossover study showing that your intervention has made a difference to my patient. You may succeed only in 10% of cases, but that 10% you will go zoom like that. So please get a clinician involved from day one, not ask him to test a prototype.
Thanks, Doctor. I think any views, Jayanta, or we can wrap up.
Yeah,
Ashish.
I agree with him. No one to advise on what startups have to do, but excellence in whatever you're doing. You're entering that era as a services or startup era. Excellence in whatever one topic that you choose. That's it. Second is, whatever he said is completely profound, absolutely profound. You have to keep the customer in the center of the equation.
Absolutely.
And you do not understand his business. Absolutely not. It does not matter what technology are you going to champion till you do not understand the actual implementation and physical challenges that the customer has. Majority of the time, failures in corporates and startups happen because of your preconceived notion of what will happen. The third thing, which I wanted to add, that's why I picked it up, is that I remember talking about this some time back. We are entering into an era where a standalone technology makes no sense at all. Sorry, over, done with it. You cannot give performance or a use case addressability to a customer till you do not understand the complete value chain of performance or usage of applications through the value chain. 5G, so what? 6G, so what? Device with 5G modem, so what? You have to understand that all technologies are coming together far more faster and quickly to address the use cases. Otherwise, no standalone technology, none at all, including Gen AI, I think that's another session you're having, or AI solves anything. That is the way the world is going to be. And let me tell the startups here, do not remain in this false notion that companies big and small are not investing. They're investing and they're competing with you as much as you are wanting to compete with them. And this is exactly what is happening there. So that's the only thing I wanted to add to the doctor.
Thanks, Ashish. You have a question? Maybe only one question we'll take.
So I'm from the education sector. I was an IIT Bombay director and so on. But you leave the IITs, the education system in India, higher or secondary level, is not good. Needs a lot of improvement. Can 5G help, and how?
So I was in Sun many years back, and again, I don't think 5G can help there. things like NPTEL project that we did with IIT Chennai, things like K-12 that we rolled out in 2000, making curriculum in local language with the help of CDAC in multilingual. All of those technologies, taking all these syllabuses and courseware in local languages, enabled on mobile phones, interactivity in local languages, from a voice interaction. I think a large number of these things are more important before the connectivity comes in, because you can download syllabus on 4G. But imagine people being taught chemistry, physics, maths in villages who have access now, but in English or Hindi or some other, some of these things have to go to vernacular if you're going to address the education system at a large place. Otherwise, the data centers, e-libraries, majority of majority of it is already in place, but it needs to, that's my view, it needs to get localized for more consumption to happen at that level. And I think that's not happening so much. I did read somewhere that the government is wanting to do. I think that's really the bottleneck. 5G, if it'll be there on a public, they can download and keep it there. But if there's no content, what will they download?
Thanks, Ashish. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jeevan. Thanks, Ashish. Thanks, Jayant. Thanks, Doctor. It was definitely a great conversation, keeping everybody awake after lunch. Thanks again.